The path of the Noob is a long and treacherous one, filled with aches and woes, horrors and turmoil, fear and chaos. If one can overcome such obstacles and allow the illusion to pass over, what await is nothing short of glory. Because in this quest for glory, one must not lose sight, for true victory lies not in those who wield absolute strength, but in those who can overcome adversity through permanence. Hello, beautiful people of YouTube. My name is Sckullie, and welcome back. For a while now, I've been getting deep into the world of PvMing in RuneScape, and as of recently, it seems like a new influx of players are also trying to do the same. So, this video is intended to be a starting out point for those of you new and old trying your hand at PvM. However, this video is not a guide on optimal DPS rotations, since many creators have already covered this topic, and I feel like adding another ultimate DPS rotation guide would just be redundant. Instead, this video will focus on more fundamentals, like having a good HUD layout, understanding the features of the UI, knowing what to bring to a PvM encounter, knowing how and when to use defensive abilities to keep yourself in the fight, and lastly, we're going to cover how to incorporate defensive abilities while your main DPS rotation is on cooldown. Now, we've got a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so the HUD customization system on RuneScape is an extremely powerful and useful tool, not only for PvMing, but literally everything else in game. Despite this, in my opinion, it doesn't seem like the majority of players are using it correctly or to the best of its ability. For example, type in RuneScape 3 HUD layout on Google. I did, and what I saw made my eyes burn. Some of these screenshots would make a UI designer cry in their sleep. So, what I recommend before even beginning PvM is to focus on this. There is no point in putting yourself in an already difficult PvM situation while having a HUD layout that's fighting you and also making things difficult on you. The point of a well-constructed user interface is to be able to pull information or a function that you need within a quick glance. It is important to keep your eye on the prize because the moment you look away could cost you your boss kill. I'm going to preface that if you're interested in making a layout that looks like mine, stay tuned. I will be releasing a short video within the next few days explaining how to do so. With all that said, this is what mine looks like. It's very minimalistic, provides full functionality with very little sacrifice to what you can actually see and interact with in game. My combat bar is not only used for combat. As you can see, it has teleports, items that I may be using, skilling abilities, etc. This system allows you to do this so you can keep those annoying panels off your screen, in turn allowing you to see more. Some notable features I'd like to cover as well because they are also very helpful. Action bar binding. This allows you to bind specific bars to specific weapons and combat styles, essentially allowing you to switch from one weapon or combat style and go immediately to another without having to manually tick it yourself. Combat XP allows you to focus XP in specific skills dependent on what combat style you're using. Both of these options can be found in settings, gameplay, combat, and action bar. However, I will be covering them in the aforementioned video that I will be releasing soon. Lastly, instead of using your directional or WASD keys to move your camera, get used to using your middle mouse button. It will just make orientating your camera a lot easier, especially in combat. Alright, so we are at inventory setup. And inventory setup is super simple, but there's a little bit of nuance dependent on how far along you are in the game. For example, an endgame player's inventory setup will look completely different to a newer player's because they are more familiar with the tools and know how to use them correctly. With that said, the majority of inventories can be broken up into fundamental parts. Here you have your stat boosting potions, and their job is to boost stats in the combat skills that you are training in. Here you have your prayer potions and super restores. These potions are responsible for keeping your prayer topped off while restoring stats that have been debuffed. And of course, here the easiest to understand is your food. Here you want to buy what's usually most affordable to you. This type of food is called solid food, and solid food is anything that you eat for a high healing boost that drops your adrenaline. And finally, this is going to be a little bit more technical, so hear me out. This right here is a tick eating set. Now, before we continue, we need to define what tick or tick eating is. So, RuneScape runs on a tick-by-tick basis. Essentially, every 0.6 seconds is an in-game tick, and actions in-game are updated to the server in 0.6 second intervals. Actions can be moving, sealing, chat inputs, or even taking damage. This is how the game operates, and it's meant to reduce lag on servers. Now, in terms of tick eating, there's a finite number of damage over time, or dot damage, that a player can receive within a game tick. It all depends on the type of boss you're fighting. It can be more, it can be less. But what tick eating does is allow you to out-heal dot damage for a short period of time, giving you the opportunity to either escape or set up defenses so you can get back in the action. Setting it up is pretty simple. Now, what you will need is Radeon brews of any kind and either a green or blue blubber jellyfish. Blue being the most expensive of the two, and both can be bought at the GE. Keybind both the Radeon brew and the jelly to two keys, close to each other, and spam them. Ta-da! That is tick eating. Now, to make it easier on you, you can set a macro to both those keys, either on your keyboard or mouse, so that at one touch, you'll use both items and utilize tick eating more efficiently. As an added benefit, tick eating does not drop your adrenaline, like standard or solid food does. So being able to utilize tick eating correctly is about 90% of the battle. Also forgot to mention my supporting items, that being the Enhanced Excalibur and Elven Ritual Shard. The Elven Ritual Shard can be bought straight up from the Grand Exchange, and the Enhanced Excalibur can be obtained by completing a series of achievements in-game. They are not mandatory, but are very helpful as they help conserve the amount of food and prayer potions that you consume. So I want you to understand where I'm coming from as we get into this next part. In my mind, you are either a new player or just generally new to PvM. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I exonerate you and admire your efforts to improve. But because you fall into one of these two categories, chances are high that you struggle with DPS output, which is fine. That's something you'll learn over time. However, you do not need max DPS output to kill bosses. You know what you do need? You need to stay alive. Simply put, you can't DPS if you're dead. I know, it's a shocker. So we're going to be reviewing defensive abilities and how you can use them to stay alive. The abilities we're going to be looking at today are Debilitate, Reflect, Devotion, Resonance, Divert, Preparation, Immortality, Anticipation, and Freedom. So admittedly, this portion of the video is going to be a bit of an information dump, but I promise if you at least get a baseline understanding of how these skills work, you will start to improve. So I'm going to break down these abilities so they're simple to understand. Debilitate reduces damage by 50% for 7.8 seconds. Reflect reduces damage by 50% for 9.6 seconds, and also reflects that damage back to the attacker. Both cost 50% adrenaline to activate, and will be your most common form of damage mitigation. Both these abilities can be used in rotation, one after the other, or together for even greater damage mitigation. Devotion. Once activated, this ability will reduce 100% of the damage taken in the respective combat style that you are praying against for 9.6 seconds. All three of these abilities that I just mentioned are really good for mitigating dot damage. Resonance. Block the next attack and heal you for 50 to 100% of the damage taken. Divert. Block the next attack and you gain 0.8% adrenaline for every 1 to 200 damage taken. Both these abilities will reduce typeless attacks to 0, and typeless attacks are attacks that don't fall under the magic, melee, range, or necro damage hierarchy. Both cost 50% adrenaline to activate, and both share a cooldown, meaning that you can't use one and immediately after use the other one. Preparation is a companion ability, if you will, to Resonance and Divert. Once activated, it will shorten the cooldown of the aforementioned abilities by 3 seconds for every attack received. Immortality reduces all damage taken by 25% for 30 seconds. If you die within this time period, you'll be brought back with 40% health, and the damage reduction effect that you received will be removed. This is essentially giving you a second chance. This is a ultimate ability and will cost 100% adrenaline to cast, so it's up to your discretion to decide when is a good time to use it. So finally, we have Anticipation and Freedom. Anticipation makes you immune to stuns and reduces all damage by 10% for 10 seconds. Pretty simple. Freedom removes all stuns and binds and grants immunity to stuns and binds for 6 seconds. Both of these abilities work in tandem. They kind of do similar things, being that they both release and or prevent you from being stunned. Anticipation would be used in an instance where you know you are about to be stunned, where freedom is used when you are actively stunned. Alright, so I know that was quite an information dump, but trust, if you learn how to use abilities correctly, you will have no need for optimal DPS rotation. And combining a strong grasp of defensive abilities and optimal DPS rotation will eventually make you unstoppable. But wait, Sckullie, you forgot to mention that you actually need a shield to be able to use these abilities. Yep. Using these abilities require a shield or a defender to activate. As a baseline explanation, without getting into too much detail, a shield is used to block massive amounts of damage at the cost of DPS, where a defender is used to block damage while not entirely hurting DPS, but also you don't block as much damage as a shield. Both have a purpose and a place where they sit. But what if you don't want to use either? Is that even a thing? Yep, with the release of Necromancy, 2 incantations were released that actually can be used with any combat style. We have Darkness and Bone Shield, and they're pretty simple. Darkness lasts for about 12 minutes, and you get a flat 25% chance to completely negate damage in the form of a dodge. Bone Shield lasts until you turn it off, and it gives you a passive shield, a shield that you do not have to equip, while simultaneously allowing you to use defensive abilities in whatever format you like. So we are getting close to the end of the video, and before I let you folks go, there's something I want to talk to you about that I'd like to call the order of combat. Think of it as a timeline. So from left to right, we have the start of the boss encounter all the way up into the kill. We have the progression that a player will have to go through to achieve that boss kill. So you have adrenaline building. That could be anything from using your auto attacks to build adrenaline to using a adrenaline pot or adrenaline renewal. DPS. And if I have to explain what DPS is at this point in the video, then we have bigger problems. But the reason I've laid it out in this format is because not all bosses are straightforward. Some bosses have kill mechanics right at the beginning of the fight. Some are spread out throughout the fight. So it's important to always be prepared. And hopefully before you go into a boss fight, you do a little bit of research before doing it blind. But what does being prepared mean? Being prepared means setting up defenses. Surely you are going into boss encounters with full adrenaline. If you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice. Set defense is essentially using any of the abilities we covered in this video. But like I mentioned, some bosses are just not predictable. So you'll have to set defenses again if necessary. Keep in mind that using defensive abilities will use up adrenaline. So you'll have to build adrenaline again so you can eventually DPS. What I recommend is play safe. If you encounter an insta-kill mechanic or a mechanic that does a lot of damage, do what you need to avoid being wiped. And then, when available, look for an opportunity to DPS. And I promise with my heart, mind, and soul that if you follow at least one thing from this video, you will eventually achieve your boss kill. And that's it. We made it to the end of the video. I'm exhausted. This video took forever to make. Want to give special thanks to a good friend of mine, Alpha, for helping me make the video. And also want to thank all the support I got on my last video. I saw the views and it is my highest viewed video, I believe, as of late. I'm gonna go no life Power World. Good luck on your boss fight, and I'll see you guys on my next video. My name is Sckullie, and I'm exhausted.